If you've struggled for years to become a fluent English speaker, here's great news. I'm going to share 3 breakthrough techniques so that you can become a flawless, fluent English speaker. Now try saying that quickly. Flawless, fluent English speaker. Yes, and you'll be able to speak naturally and native-like. I can help you slash your learning time. I've helped thousands of people to easily and effectively become fluent English speakers in a very short time. And I can help you do it too. My name is Herbert Lee. I'm a Canadian-born Chinese, and like you, I struggled for many years to master spoken English. When I was 8 years old, I went to my first birthday party, and I didn't know how to sing Happy Birthday to You. When you listen to me, you probably think I'm a native speaker, but actually English is not my native tongue. When I was growing up in Canada, I spoke a dialect of Cantonese at home because my mother didn't speak English. I got my first English breakthrough back in 1980 when I joined Toastmasters while living in Canada. My breakthrough came just 7 months after joining this club. The club helps people improve their public speaking and communication skills. You see, in just 7 short months, I won the club, area, and district speech contests. I even competed at the regional finals, but was disqualified for going over by 7 seconds. And remember, I was competing against native speakers in Canada, so this was a very important breakthrough in my life. Then, for the next 20 years, I was able to develop breakthrough technique to help other people overcome their fear of public speaking and speak confidently in front of large audiences. I taught many different kinds of people: CEOs, highly paid executives, PR professionals, and even politicians. I was able to show them very quickly, in 7 hours or less, how to overcome their fear and speak in front of very large audiences. But I realized many people don't need to learn how to speak in front of large audiences. They just want to be able to carry on a simple conversation in English and express their ideas clearly in plain English. So I spent the next 3 months developing and researching breakthrough techniques that would help anyone who wanted to become a fluent English speaker. Then I produced courses that would help people do that. For the past 20 years, I've been able to teach these techniques to anyone who wanted to develop a breakthrough in English fluency. And my students have had outstanding results. Now, I want to share 3 breakthrough techniques with you. Breakthrough technique number 1. Break the translation loop. I noticed that most of my students used a technique called the translation loop. The translation loop is the single factor that is hurting students' progress. You need to get rid of the translation loop if you really want to get an English breakthrough. So, what's the translation loop? You hear a question, and then you put the question in your brain, and you're thinking about it in your native language. Then you translate from your native language into an answer, and then from your native language translate it back into English, and then you give the answer. Well, unfortunately, the answer is usually not very fluent. This is how we get terms like Fringlish for French speakers of English, Spanglish for Spanish speakers of English, and Chinglish English speakers with Chinese speakers. Because when you mix your own language with English, it does not sound fluent. It does not sound grammatically correct. And for sure, many people will not be able to understand you. What you need to do is break this habit. the translation loop. It's the only way you can really become fluent. Of course, this will take time, and you need to take steps to do it. Breaking the translation loop is harder than learning any skill because you're trying to unlearn a skill, a bad skill. The translation loop is a skill that's holding you back. The first thing you need to do is to buy yourself an English to English dictionary. My recommendation to you is what's called an English Learner's Dictionary. Now, many of you probably already have a dictionary. English French, English Spanish, English German, English Japanese, English Chinese, because you want to be able to understand the words that you see and hear in English. And the easiest way is to use a native language to English dictionary, then you can understand very easily. But this is actually not good for you because you're developing your brain to keep processing two languages from your native language into English and back again. So then your English vocabulary never improves or improves very little. And when you want to use a word in English, you're still thinking in your native language, so your progress in becoming a fluent English speaker is very slow. So get yourself an English Learner's Dictionary. My favorite recommendation is the Collins, C-O-L-L-I-N-S, Collins English Learner's Dictionary. And get the basic edition. Some of you may think, oh, if I get the advanced edition, I'll learn faster. It doesn't work that way because the basic one will build a firm foundation so that you can learn quicker as you develop your foundation. This is the very first thing you should do to break the habit of the translation loop. Then you can start developing good English vocabulary for yourself, and you will stop using the translation loop. Breakthrough number 2, develop active listening skills. That's right. Wait a minute. Develop active listening skills? You want to become a fluent English speaker. But this guy's telling you develop active listening skills. Well, stop and think about this. Why do I say you need listening skills? Well, you may think you want to become a fluent English speaker. Actually, what you want is to become an effective English conversationalist. And conversation takes two people, one to speak and one to listen. And if you're not a good listener, if you do not listen well in English, and you're always saying to the other person who's talking to you, "Excuse me, could you please repeat that?" Or, "Would you speak a little bit slower?" "What did you say again?" No one will want to talk to you because you're a poor listener. You need to develop listening first. Active listening skills need to be high up on your list if you want to become a really fluent English speaker. So how do you do this well? Listen. First, it's very important when you want to become a good listener that you need to be interested in what other people are saying. Sincerity from your heart. You really have to want to listen to what other people say and not become a yappy blabbermouth. Listening is a skill you need to get. But before I go ahead, let me ask you a question. How many of you have taken active listening lessons in your native language? Now stop and think about this. Have you ever taken any listening lessons in your native language? Now some of you are saying, "No, I never took a lesson in listening in my native language. Never took a single class." But stop and think about it. When you were a baby, for about a year and a half, you couldn't speak. So all you could do was listen to your parents, their friends, and anyone who came around the house, or in the shopping center, or in the supermarket. You listened to this for 24 hours a day in your native language. You couldn't say anything, but it all went inside because you listened. And that's why you're so good at listening in your native language. You have close to 2,500 or 3,000 hours of listening in your native language before you even said mama or papa. And chances are, once you said mama or papa, your listening skills became much worse. Human beings are funny. Once we learn to speak, our listening skills get really bad. Because now we can speak, we can say something, so we stop listening. But let's get back to our lesson about listening. Active listening takes a deep interest in other people and what they say. Here's a tip. When someone says something, lean over a little bit and say, wow, that's very interesting. Because you're interested in what other people are saying to you, they will want to talk to you. They will find you interesting, and you will naturally become a better listener. And you know, good listeners are very hard to find these days. Even in your native language, you know that's true. Here are a few other ways to master active listening. When you watch movies to improve your listening, try to get a movie and then watch the movie without the subtitles. It's very easy to leave the subtitles on, either in English or in your native language. And then you learn to read very quickly, but you do not learn to listen. My other suggestion is when you watch movies, don't try to watch a whole 2-hour movie. Instead, try to watch 10 or 15 minutes, then go back and play it over again. 10 or 15 minutes, and then go over it again. You may not understand the first time you hear. You don't understand anything. But repeated listening, slowly, you get to understand more and more. Listening is not an on-off switch. It's not you can do it or you can't do it. It's a matter of degree. You get better. You can understand 10%, then 20%, then 50%, and then 100%. It's not like school where things are right and wrong. It's not on or off. The more you listen to it, the more you will begin to understand in English. And soon you'll be thinking in English, which is a very important thing if you want to break the habit of thinking in your native language. And this is another way to break the translation loop that I talked about earlier. With all respect to your native language, which you've used your entire life. But if you want to become a fluent English speaker, you have to break the habit of translating and using the translation loop. Eliminating the translation loop is a process called unlearning. You need to unlearn this habit if you want to become a fluent English speaker. Finally, one last point. Just remember, if you look at the word listen, L-I-S-T-E-N, and you mix the letters around, you will get the word silent, which is S-I-L-E-N-T. To be a good listener, you need to be silent. Breakthrough number 3, clustering. A few years ago, I came across a book by the late T.K. Ann called Cracking the Chinese Puzzles. At the time, I was trying to learn to read and write in Chinese. In his book, he says it's much easier and much more effective to learn Chinese by not learning individual characters. Instead, learn them in groups. He liked to call them clusters. This is an approach called cheaper by the dozen. That's an English expression that says, when you buy more, you pay less. In language learning, learning clusters of words is more efficient than lists of random words. This principle, this idea, doesn't apply only to the Chinese language. It applies to learning any language and also learning English. So how do you do this in English? How do you learn things in clusters so that you can make it cheaper by the dozen? It's very easy. Two important clusters that I recommend people to learn are phrasal verbs and collocations. Now, if you've gone through the traditional English learning system, you've probably learned the 8 parts of speech: nouns, pronouns, adjectives, adverbs, prepositions, interjections, conjunctions, and articles. You've had many lessons drilling these 8 parts of speech. But what you didn't learn in school was phrasal verbs. When I ask my students, did you ever learn phrasal verbs in school? Most of them will say, I think the teacher talked about it, or they might have had one lesson in it. It's because phrasal verbs are used in conversation, which is informal English. Classroom English focuses on formal English. To become fluent in English, phrasal verbs are a very important part of becoming fluent. Now you remember, a phrasal verb is a verb and a preposition. You put the two together and you have a completely different meaning than each of the words separately. That's why it's difficult to learn phrasal verbs. Very often the two have no relation to each other. They just appear together and have a certain meaning. Now you're going to say, I know what I'll do. I'm going to get a phrasal verb dictionary and memorize all the phrasal verbs. Well, I wouldn't do that. Stop and think for a minute. Just the verb come, C-O-M-E. You have come on, come into, come by, come for, come with, come between, come at, come to. Wow! 50 phrasal verbs with just the verb come. Go, G-O, go with, go between, go at, go for, go with, go by. Another 50 phrasal verbs. In English, altogether we have almost 10,000 phrasal verbs. Now, if you're going to try to memorize all the phrasal verbs, you're going to spend the rest of your life in eternity just memorizing phrasal verbs. And memorizing them doesn't mean you're going to be able to use them or listen for them. So what's the best way to learn phrasal verbs? Listen carefully. Listen carefully to when people use phrasal verbs. When people speak, they will use phrasal verbs in their normal conversation. So what you need to do is take notes. What phrasal verbs are they using that you don't understand? So you start listening for verb and preposition combinations. Take down the notes and then go to your English Learner's Dictionary and look it up. What does it mean? Very soon you'll have a list of common phrasal verbs that people around you are actually using, that then you can use. But as you do this, you will also develop a sense for the phrasal verbs, and over time you will develop a wonderful skill which I call guess the meaning of the phrasal verb. I teach this to my students in class, and many of them think they can't do it. But over a period of time, they learn to guess the meaning of phrasal verbs just by listening to the other words in the sentence. This is a skill that takes a little bit of time. It's a new skill, and anything new takes a little bit of time and practice. But you know that even native speakers don't know all the phrasal verbs in the English language. Actually, this is the skill that they use to understand phrasal verbs that they don't know. They're just guessing what it means based on the words in the rest of the sentence. It's based on understanding the context of the rest of the sentence. This is a very useful way to learn phrasal verbs. The second cluster you should learn are called collocations. C-O-L-L-O-C-A-T-I-O-N-S. Collocations are common combinations of words in English, words that almost always appear together. In English, we say things like a cool breeze, a golden opportunity. These are common collocations. We say the bride wore a flowing gown. We are in a deep recession. So these are all word combinations that are very common in English, and these are called collocations. Listen for them in conversation and make notes of the ones you hear often. So, spend some time learning collocations as well as phrasal verbs. For now, just remember the important English breakthrough is to spend time learning clusters to improve your vocabulary and fluency. And these are the two clusters that you must work on: phrasal verbs and collocations. I tell you, it's a lot easier than trying to memorize lists of words, particularly random words, which you don't use and no one else uses. So those are the 3 breakthrough techniques I want to share with you today. I know you'll benefit greatly if you use and master these 3 techniques. Someone once wrote, "Insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result." Many of us go through life doing the same thing. Same thing. Same thing. We do the same thing and then we expect a different result. If you've been studying English for years and you haven't got the results you want, then maybe it's time you try to do it another way. Try the 3 breakthrough techniques and get better results. Someone else wrote, "Keep on doing what you're doing, and you're going to get what you've always been getting." It's the same idea, the same logic. You can't keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. I've tested these techniques with thousands of students, so I know that these techniques work. These students had the same struggles you did. They used methods that didn't work, and then when they took these techniques and tried them and they worked, they were amazed and surprised. So don't ask yourself the question, will these techniques work for me? No, you need to ask yourself, will I work these techniques? You need to put the time and energy to have a real English breakthrough, and no one can do this for you. And it's not easy because you must learn to change your habits. And we all know that habit change is not an easy thing to do. In summary, the 3 breakthroughs are: breakthrough number 1, get rid of the translation loop. Breakthrough number 2, become an active listener. And breakthrough number 3, learn English using clusters by studying groups of important words, phrasal verbs, and collocations. Let me end this session by telling you a story about a king. There was a king in an ancient kingdom, and he called his wise men one day to his court. He said, "Wise men, I would like you to take all the world's knowledge and wisdom and put it into one book, a single volume, and you have 2 years to do it." So for 2 years, the wise men slaved over every book they could find. Then they put all the knowledge and wisdom in a single book. They happily presented it to the king, who gratefully accepted it. Then the king said, "But you see, I am getting old and frail. Can you take this book of knowledge and compress it into one chapter?" Of course they said, "Yes, Your Majesty," and went off to produce one chapter in 6 months. 6 months later, they came to the king and said, "Your Majesty, this is the one chapter with all the world's wisdom and knowledge." And His Majesty again graciously accepted. And then he said, "Would you mind taking 3 more months and taking this one chapter and make it into one page?" Again they accepted and went away to do this task. They came back 3 months later with 1 page, and His Majesty said, "But you see, I'm getting old. My eyesight is not very good. Can you reduce all the knowledge from 1 page down to 1 sentence?" Exactly 1 month after, they came back with 1 sentence on a piece of paper. And the king was overjoyed. Can you guess what the 1 sentence was? The 1 sentence that the king received, which had all the knowledge and wisdom of the world condensed into a single sentence, was, "There is no free lunch." There is no free lunch means you don't get something for nothing. If you want something, you have to put in effort. The fact that you have watched this entire video makes you very special. Most people will stop watching before the halfway mark. Some of you will look at this video and tell yourself, "Great video, valuable lessons, some good ideas here." You might even put a comment down below. And as much as I appreciate that, I'm really hoping that you will do something for yourself. Because 5 minutes after watching this video, you'll be off to find another video to watch, to find another magic formula, another valuable secret tip. But you know and I know that knowing all this won't change anything. You're just killing time. You won't get the result that you were looking for, which is to become a flawless, fluent English speaker. That's the very reason you decided to watch this video instead of doing something else. So just take one more step. Ask yourself what you are going to do after you have learned what you have learned. Are you going to get rid of your native language dictionary and get that learner's dictionary? Are you going to watch or listen to a podcast or watch a video for 20 minutes a day, every day? You decide what you want to do. But action is what produces results. I've shared with you the 3 best ways to effectively become a fluent English speaker. If you take action, even a small one, you will get on track to become a flawless, fluent English speaker. If you do nothing, you can expect nothing as well. So if you want to speak naturally and native-like, you need to take the 3 breakthroughs that I've shared with you seriously. One more thing you can do. If you enjoyed this session and would like to know more about how to improve your conversation skills quickly, get a copy of my research report, 5 Biggest Mistakes in English Conversation. I've done extensive research into the art and science of effective conversation. If you want to improve your conversation skills quickly, you need to get this report. Just go to the link in the description below to get your copy. I know you're going to enjoy this report. Put the ideas into action and watch your conversation skills skyrocket. Come back to this channel for more tips and techniques that you can use to really improve your conversation skills. This is Herbert Lee, hoping that your next conversation will be interesting and engaging for everyone.